Once upon a time, the business jet was the must-have accessory for any self-respecting CEO. But with shareholders breathing heavily down their necks, this week on Fast Track, we ask if 2009 will be the year that high-flying business bosses finally have to give their big boys' toys back. Hi there, welcome to Fast Track. I'm Thalia Pellegrini. Now, when it comes to the price of a ticket, it seems a bit of a no-brainer. Do you pay $4,000 for a business class seat or $4 million for a business class jet? Well, in the recent boom years, CEOs around the world justified the expense of a company jet by saying their time was money. But since the world economy took a nosedive, the cost of a private jet seems more of an extravagance than an essential business tool. We've sent Aaron Heselhurst from the BBC's business unit to Geneva to find out more.
Well, here we are at Farnborough Airport, southwest of London, and I'm about to get on board this thing. It's a Learjet bound for EBACE, which stands for the European Business Aviation Conference and Exhibition. To you and I, basically, it's one of the world's largest business jet air shows. Let's go take a ride.
Sweet dreams are made of these. Who am I to disagree?
Over the past 5 years, aircraft manufacturers have been celebrating the biggest boom this industry has ever seen. Orders from all over the world were flying in thick and fast. In fact, the plane makers couldn't make these jets fast enough, with wait lists and backlog orders reaching 4 to 5 years. But what a difference 12 months can make.
I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if you're planning to sell your jet in place now and fly back commercial. Let the record show no hands went up.
You're looking at Detroit's Big Auto 3. The chiefs of Ford, Chrysler and General Motors were vilified for flying in style when they went to Washington with their hands out, each asking for billions of dollars of government bailout money.
And that, of course, has just added more turbulence, excuse the pun, to an industry hugely exposed already to the downturn in corporate profits. And all of that combined has, well, forced the world of business aviation to descend rather rapidly from up here, high in the sky, down to the tarmac with a very large bump.
And since that day in Washington, the spread of citizen outrage has reached far and wide. Dozens of major public companies have been pressured to shed their corporate jets, from Starbucks and Sears to Citigroup, the Royal Bank of Scotland and the insurance giant AIG. It's been forced to sell 2 of its jets and cancel the delivery of 2 more. After all, AIG has received $180 billion of taxpayers' money.
Left at 8 o'clock at night, 8:30, and got here at about 10:30.
However, the president of Gulfstream says you can't condemn an industry from the misguided actions of a small few.
It's a business tool. And 85% of the people that are on these airplanes are not CEOs. Not that there's anything wrong for a CEO. They should be using the aircraft for business purposes. They're the decision makers. They're the ones trying to expand the business, not only in the United States, but also globally.
In fact, the manufacturers are reinforcing the message, no plane, no gain.
It's a story of jobs. These aircraft are called business aircraft for a reason. Business creates wealth, it creates jobs, and those jobs translate into very, very high-paying taxpayers that go and stimulate the economy even further.
It's a $22 billion industry. Last year, 1,138 of these jets were delivered to customers. But of course, as the global economic recession grinds on, industry experts here at this show have told me that the market's falling so fast that they're getting a bloody nose. And by that, they mean come 2010, deliveries will be less than 600.
Charles Alcock is a journalist who's followed the industry for more than 20 years. He's never seen it this bad.
The theme for this year is undoubtedly retrenchment and sustainability. All the manufacturers here are basically looking at each other, chatting to each other, saying, okay, have we done enough to adjust our business plans to make sure that we're still here next year? Interestingly, it's a great leveler, a downturn like this. I mean, I've seen, die-hard competitors actually chatting to each other and saying, look, let's put our differences aside. We all need this business to survive.
And for that to happen, the plane makers have had to dramatically and radically cut their production numbers. And that's resulted in close to 20,000 jobs so far being axed. It's grim news for communities which support this kind of aviation. The streets here in Wichita, Kansas, home to Cessna since 1924, are a perfect example of an industry and thus a community which is suffering. Cessna makes more of these jets than anybody else in the world and is axing nearly 5,000 jobs, or about 30% of its workforce. But that doesn't mean orders have dried up completely.
Ich habe versucht, in den 80er Jahren schon Flugzeuge an die Lufthansa zu verkaufen und auch die damalige.
Yes, that was in German, and yes, you did hear the name Lufthansa. Roger White, a vice president at Cessna, is literally handing over the keys to a brand new Cessna jet to the airline Lufthansa. The German carrier is the first airline in the world to offer its passengers a private jet service on its very own private jet fleet.
We are offering our customers point-to-point services in Europe, going from Moscow to Florence, just on a Lufthansa private jet without touching any hub and being straight in a couple of hours there with no hassle at all.
Lufthansa's ordered 7 Cessna jets and says it's not worried about the global recession.
After every downturn there is an upswing as well, so of course passengers will be on the long term staying with a product like the Lufthansa private jet.
And it's not only Lufthansa that remains optimistic about the need for these as a business tool. Take VistaJet as an example. It's the fastest growing private jet company in the world, with growth in the first 3 months of this year up 25%.
Meet Thomas Floor. This rather savvy entrepreneur started the business back in 2003. Within 2 years, he had a fleet of 5 jets, and by the end of this year, that number will be 30.
We're focusing at the high end of the marketplace. What that means is that people who are our customers, they don't go back to commercial. Okay, that is a trend for sure, which we don't see. But people get rid of their assets, or they don't find it appropriate anymore that big companies own the jets, but they will still fly on a private jet. And that's where basically our revenue is coming from.
And although Thomas's idea is to create a Four Seasons type of luxury branding, at the end of the day he insists they're just a business tool.
The further you go east on this planet, the less commercial infrastructure you have. So you take someone who has a mining industry somewhere in Siberia, and he comes from the Middle East. Now try to get from Riyadh to Petropavlovsk on a commercial flight. It's impossible.
And although aviation experts say it's going to be a long and slow recovery, there are some signs that business on these jets is picking up. VistaJet's inquiries have tripled in the past month, and the manufacturers, such as Bombardier, are also seeing a definite pickup. It may be a long flight to that light at the end of the tunnel, but this is one industry that hopes to get there as quickly as possible.